Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Paul Byrne. I run the go-to-market function here at VMWare NSX. For 13 years, I worked for VMware. The last 5, I ran the worldwide system engineering team for NSX. So we know a little something about this product, as do all people at our company. So all we do, we're good at it. Here we have a kind of a no-nonsense technical demonstration today to show you how you can consume, operate, and troubleshoot NSX in a much more easy and scalable way. You know, NSX is great, but it's not always good at being consumable. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce one of the best in the business at this, DJ Antonucci. He's one of the founders of Rest NSX, and I'll leave you with him for the demo. Feel free to post any comments or questions in the chat room. I'll be managing it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Great introduction, and thank you everyone for joining. As Paul mentioned, our goal is to come out with a bunch of short little webinars like this to really focus on the key issues at hand for any given scenario. So what we did this time was we're focused on optimizing NSX. And the reason why we chose this was because of some of the disturbances that the whole Broadcom acquisition, in our opinion, has brought to the marketplace. This could be from customers experiencing a pricing issue to adopting of NSX or whatever it may be. So we thought we'd focus on 5 key strategies and features within our application that will help you optimize your VMware NSX investment. If for some reason some of you fall outside of the bounds of sticking with NSX, we also want to be in touch with you to discuss some things that we have on our short-term roadmap regarding other vendors that we are going to support in the microseg space. So for example, if you're at a position where VMware NSX doesn't make sense for your organization anymore, maybe we help you convert over your Palo Altos, your Checkpoint, your Fortinet, your Cisco ASA over to NSX, and now you want to explore options from NSX to another vendor, please reach out to us, and we'd love to have the discussion. We have some capabilities that we've developed in-house, but we're always looking for user feedback in terms of what you guys are looking for out there. So without further ado, the focus of this is optimizing your investment in NSX, but we don't want to be blind to the fact that there are scenarios where that just may not make sense for particular customers. So as Paul said, kind of no nonsense, demos, technical demos. I'm gonna, kind of log in right here and go into one of our demo systems, which is called Cloud Control. So Cloud Control is a virtual appliance that you deploy and download in about 5 minutes. And we've gone over this in other webinars, but the focus here is really 5 use cases. So I'm going to log in here to one of our portals here and kind of give you an idea of what we're talking about and how we can optimize NSX environment. So 30,000 foot overview of the application is that Cloud Control is a multi-cloud manager. So you can manage your legacy NSX-V, your NSX-T, right now just called NSX, and any VMware cloud running that's out there under a single pane of glass, if you will. And the way we do that is under our data sources. And so this is somewhat of a refresher, this first use case on optimization for some of you who are familiar with our application, but I think it's a very powerful statement. So in one management plane, I have my NSX-V managers, I have my NSX-T managers, could be local managers, global managers, whatever it may be. I have my VMware cloud instances. I also have hooks into other VMware products like Verni or network operations, and Checkpoint, which we'll talk about the conversions in a little bit. But the way this helps you optimize your NSX investment is, one, it's less time for you to have to log into multiple places. So this could be lab and production or Cloud 1 or Cloud 2 of your VMware clouds. So I can just have access to everything in one location. You can see I have all my data sources here, and I can just easily switch between them. You as a user don't care that it's V or T. You just want the same user interface across all of them. So that's what we do. We call that normalizing the user experience, which saves you time and also money and effort when it comes to provisioning those systems. So once they're added as data sources, we support something called bulk provisioning. And this is all CSV-based method for creating objects. So I want to create 1,000 firewall rules, for example, on my NSX vManager. I can do that via CSV. Then I can use that same CSV, maybe change naming convention or security groups, whatever it may be, and use it against NSX-T. And I can do that against, let's say, my lab manager and my production manager if I want to. So the point is that once we centralize the architecture, we have flexibility to ingest data and also push data at extreme scale, but also extreme simplicity. So that is, use case number one wrapped up very quickly because I want to get to the other ones. So multi-cloud management, on-prem, cloud. Again, this could be, I want to manage my development environment and my production managers in one place. And I don't need federation, for example, on T. We can do that. I want to manage my on-prem NSX manager and my VMware cloud, maybe it's VMC on AWS manager in one location. I can do that. And maybe I want to synchronize policies between them. I can do that within our system. But the list goes on and on. So for example, if you have multiple clouds, this could be a VMware Oracle cloud. This could be a VMware cloud on AWS or a Google, GCVE, whatever it may be. If you want to manage policies, you have to log into each one of them and make your changes and hope you get it right. The other thing is that now, because we have a centralized architecture, we can synchronize the policies between those different environments using a feature that we call Policy Engine. And I'll actually come back to Policy Engine when we talk about other features here. But that is use case number one. Use case number two is really when I have my system up and running and I want to start optimizing it. So we've kind of gotten out of the area of making deployments easier, help me optimize my NSX investment for maybe getting it off the shelf into production, or maybe just simplifying my operations for day-to-day management. Now we're into optimizing what I've already deployed. And one of those tools that we have at our disposal here is called Object Analyzer. What Object Analyzer does is it looks at your existing firewall rules and objects. And so I'm going to run this against my NSX manager, which I think has a few thousand firewall rules and I think 10 or 15,000 security groups. So it's going to just take 1 minute here. And it's going to look at all the relationships. And where this is useful is not only for a one-time use, but maybe a quarterly usage of our application where we look at our firewalls to see what could be cleaned up. So optimization from this perspective is my firewall optimization. So this could be, duplicate objects, right? This could also be just unused objects from that perspective. So as we load the data here, we're going to see a lot of what we call stale or inactive objects across my environment because I have a lot of security groups, over 14,000 and 1,100 firewall rules. So that's disproportionate. Why is that? We're going to see why in a second. So once we go through the data and start looking at these relationships, we're going to give you an output of this information. We can see this is clearly a lab environment where I have 1,115 inactive firewall rules, and I have just a handful of active rules here, which is just these few rules. So first off, we see the hit counts, right, by the rules that are actually in use. And we could do this all-time hit counts, or you can actually say last 24 hours, 1 week, whatever you want within the system. But where I want to focus is these inactive objects. So what is an inactive object? An inactive object is a firewall rule, in this example, that is disabled or has no hits on it within the system. So we know that since we've deployed NSX, these rules have not been hit, and therefore we can delete them. And we can export all this data into Excel. You can verify it in third-party systems like Splunk or VROPS, whatever it is, and come back in here, and if you have permissions, do a bulk cleanup. And again, you can, I think, hopefully see here that you can run this on a quarterly basis. You can run this once a year, whatever you want, but this helps optimizing the firewall rule sets. Like I said, we can look for duplications, and our logic on that is very advanced in the sense of how we look for duplicates. It's just not one rule compared to another rule based upon what object is in that. We actually look into the objects to see how similar they are. So I may have two security groups that one is called security group web and the other one is called security group web 2, right? At a high level, they're different, but if we look into them, we'll be able to tell by their effective members, et cetera, on there. Then we also look at the child elements. So what we call a child element is anything within that rule. So for example, if we switch over to security groups, of my 14,319, 14,315 are inactive. Well, why is that? So there's two reasons we would mark an object inactive. One is it's not referenced, meaning it's orphaned, right? It's not in another security group that's in a firewall rule, or it's not in a firewall rule itself. So it's just taking up memory and space in my database on my NSX manager. And I can clean this up. We've seen optimizations of 30, 40, 50% of running this application. Some customers, when they're migrating from V to T, some customers, when they have migrated from third-party firewalls over to NSX using our tool, once the rule sets are in NSX, we do this analysis and we can say, oh, this rule hasn't been hit in 2 years, right? And we can look at this data on here. The other reason is it's referenced but not in use. So this security group is referenced in a firewall rule or another security group in a firewall rule, but it's not in use, meaning it has no hits on it. So we know that the parent element, the firewall rule, is stale, but also the child elements, which is a security group in this example. And so just like before, if I clean up the rules, I could come back in and clean up all the inactive or stale objects on that side. So in a matter of hours, you can optimize your inventory on your NSX managers from duplicates down to unused objects and run this over and over again. For example, if you saw how quickly this was run for 1,100 rules, I think it was, you can imagine a few, call it 10,000 rules, maybe take 15, 20 minutes, get the data, and you analyze it. Again, you can take no action or just report on it if you want. So that's what we call Object Analyzer, very important optimization tool. So moving on to third is a tool called Rule Analyzer, which is similar to Object Analyzer, except it's only looking at rules and not the objects. So if we go into Rule Analyzer, we're going to load up all of our DFW sections and objects, and then we can actually select one that we want to look at. We could select all sections, and we'll do that real quick here. We're going to use data in our database here, so we're not doing real-time AP calls against NSX. We can store all here. We can see, sort everything by hit counts like we're doing before that, right? And we'll get all the rules and all the objects. But now let's say we want to optimize some firewall rules. So let's look at a section called Applied To. And this is on this NSX manager that I'm logged into in this other tab. So let's go take a look at that real quick. So on this other tab, here's that rule, Applied To, and as a source of a web server group, and in there it has virtual machine name contains web, right? The VM name contains web, and it actually has one effective member. It's actually 2 VNICs, but it's one VM within there. So that's great. But as everyone knows, the very powerful feature of NSX is this Applied To field, right? This says how many ESXi hosts are going to get these firewall rules. Right now, I have applied to a security group that has just a segment port in it, right? This VM's port. And so it's just this one VM in there, which may or may not be a member of that group. So is this Applied To optimized? I don't know. Let's go ask REST NSX. So I ran this earlier, and we see that I could select entire section or individual rule and run this Applied To optimizer within the section. And I got these results back. So my DFW Applied To of that 9 security group is 5.88% effective. Well, we do this calculation when we export the data when we give it to you, but we also make a recommendation that says, you know what, there's probably a better security group or segment that you should use as the Applied To in this firewall rule. So you can make that change, update it, and we'll update the percentage. So for example, if we look at this security group called Web Server, we'll copy that. Let's go take a look at what this guy is within the system. And we'll look at Web Server. Edit this guy, and let's see what the criteria is. Okay, virtual machine name contains web. Okay, we've seen that before, and really no other objects within here. So that's an interesting thing for us because we now know that it recommended a security group that only has that matching criteria in it, which makes sense, right? Because we saw the rule criteria of, in that security group of virtual machine name equals web. So it actually made a recommendation. All these other ones are just permutations. And if you export the data, it's going to say, okay, if you choose everything or 3, 4, 5, 6, it will be this percent effective. So you'll just pick the highest percentage effective, change the Applied To, and you're off to the races. So this is a constant adjustment we see with customers in NSX of trying to optimize the Applied To. And hopefully Rule Analyzer helps you guys out from that perspective. So this is a very, very powerful feature and wraps up what we call optimization number 3 around object analysis and rule analysis within there. So now navigating back to my main dashboard here, What I don't want lost here is that our application, being a multi-cloud manager, enables most of the features you have within the NSX UI within our application. PowerShell, CLI capabilities within our application. Third-party applications like API, Postman, put an API client within our UI. PuTTY, putting an SSH client within our UI. And we're consolidating those tool sets, which really goes back to that first use case around multi-cloud management. But I just don't want that to be lost as we're just focusing on these 5 things. The next thing that I'm going to look at here is I'm going to actually log into another instance of our cloud pods here because I have more data on this other one. And I want to show you a few new capabilities that we've developed within our application. The first one is under this query toolbar, which we were looking at earlier, is we can now search for things like applications within our environment. So I can search for virtual machines, tags, IP addresses like I can do in NSX, but we can also leverage the power of VM tools and grab all this data. It says, okay, in my environment, right, we have 1,055 applications, spread across Linux and Windows, and here's 4 VMs that are running this service on here. What 4 VMs are there? And it gives me the list. So having insight into this allows me to do a lot of things. I can create policy from this. I can also create an alerts from this. So for example, I can set up a policy that says every hour, scan my VM inventory and tell me if any VM is running this service. Maybe that service is a vulnerability, right? That you're trying to remediate in your environment, or you just want to make sure all your web servers are actually running Apache within the system. So you can do those checks within the system very quickly and easily. But you can also create policy from them. So for example, if I come back to security planning, I have this new feature called App Discovery. So App Discovery, what it does is it looks at all my virtual machines. Let me zoom in here to make this maybe a little easier to see. And of my inventory, it shows me my name, my ID, etc. But it also tells me things like what OS it's running, like I was showing before. But I can do filters and say, show me all VMs on this particular segment or of this OS type or OS version, and filter this data. And I could filter it down to all Linux guests, whatever I want. And when I'm ready, I can say define security posture. And what this will do is set me through a wizard that says, okay, all the VMs that are running Linux and Apache, I'm going to attach an existing security tag or create a new tag in there. And we'll actually attach the tag to the VM. And then we'll go to the next step here, which is create the security group. So we'll create a security group with the dynamic criteria of that security tag in it and finish it. So at the end of this wizard, you'll have all your VMs tagged with the tag you want. They'll be effective members of the security group because that tag is a member of the security group. And you can start creating policy for them. So it's a very quick process. And so we kind of call that, optimizing your time of getting things done and getting VMs in the environment. And you can run this as many times as you want within the environment out there. So it's a very useful tool from the perspective of just getting things done faster. So optimizations are abound when it comes to the capabilities here. We can also generate reports that says every 24 hours, generate a report of all my virtual machines, email me that report, and tell me if anything's changed. So for example, I could say, tell me if any new processes have spun up on any of these VMs within the system. So we're trying to combine NSX intelligence, well, not NSX intelligence, but NSX data with vCenter data, with VM tools, with Verni, and all those different capabilities into a single application. So you don't have to hop around to different locations within there. So that's just a quick snippet around what we call the fourth optimization, which is optimizing your time or security policies within your system. The last one is, you may have seen it back on this page, is that we have a few more tools at our disposal. One is called Firewall Organizer. So what we've noticed is that a lot of customers have automation tools that will create multiple DFW sections with few rules in them. So maybe 1, 2, 3 rules. Or we'll see customers with very large DFW sections, 1,000 rules, which is the max, and it makes it very cumbersome to manage. So what this allows us to do is to either split a large section into smaller sections, or merge sections together. So I could say, give me all my sections that have one rule in them. I could put a filter here, but I'll just say these, and I want to merge them together. So what this will do, will create a new section, and you'll be prompted for the name of the section. We're going to copy all the rules from this Fortinet section, this RMT, and this high section into a new section, but we're not going to delete the old ones. And we're going to actually put this section below these three, or the lowest one on this. So you'll have a new section right below here in DFW. And then you could go delete the other ones when you're ready. So we're not going to impact traffic from that perspective, right? Because we're going below it. So this allows you to consolidate, but also optimize in the sense of I can now make it more manageable for DFW, in the sense of I can split them out across manageable sections within there. So this is one example. Another example is a tool that we have called Security Group Optimizer. What Security Group Optimizer does is it looks at your security groups and looks at the nested children within there. It says, okay, this security group has 3 static members of other security groups. Well, why don't we just consolidate them, right? Because maybe I converted over a third-party system, that's how it was, or I just have a bad practice of creating a parent security group and all these children, when really I don't need to. I can just use the children. So what the optimizer will do is we'll identify that and say, I only want to identify security groups that have 3 levels deep of nesting, and disassociate them. So we'll take the IPs from the child elements and put them in the parent, and then disassociate them. So that way you can clean up your security group count and get below limits. Maybe you're facing NSX limits of 10,000 security groups, or whatever it may be within your environment. So that really helps as well. And there's tons of more tools within the application on there. So the last thing I'll cover, just again, trying to keep these short and sweet, is that within our system, we have always supported third-party firewall rule conversion. Right here, we can see Palo Alto, ASA, Fortinet, Cisco ASA, Checkpoint, whatever it may be, converting over into NSX. What we're doing within our policy engine is adding the capability to add in other vendor data sources for destination. So for example, this policy will copy all this one DFW section from this manager to this manager. But we could also say to my VMware Cloud on AWS, or this team manager. So what we're adding in is other third-party destinations for those customers who may not stick with VMware NSX and need more options out there. So please reach out to us if you're in that situation or any of these, and we'd love to help you out. So with that said, I'm going to stop the presentation and answer any questions if they have come up. Paul?
No, I don't see any unless somebody else can. Please feel free to ask a question live as well.
All right. I will stop sharing for now.
One of the amazing stories, DJ, if I may, is we had a customer on Object Analyzer, as DJ showed you before. They were on a VMC on Amazon instance, and they had 15,045 rules, which exceeds the VMC console limit of 10,000. It was unusable. It was so slow, the VMC console, that is. So after we ran Object Analyzer, we found 6,278 rules that were inactive, as he discussed before, and over 900 duplicate rules. So just by running this tool in 5 minutes, we found over 7,000 duplicate and unused rules, which drew them down below the 10,000 limit, which made their console usable again. So just a real life example of a customer who was kind of in trouble, and in a very simple way, we figured out what was going on in 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite optimization stories, for just NSXT, but we've seen the same things for customers migrating from V to T, and also just T on-prem to T cloud, of doing these same things.
Yeah, I mean, we had this other bank in Italy that was like, I don't know how many, DJ, tens of thousands of rules. Yeah. We got like a 30 or 40% reduction. And every customer tells us, oh, we're clean, we optimize all the time. Well, turns out it's not always true. So if we can help you in any way, please feel free to reach out to us. And
awesome.
And even if you want a private demo, you don't want to ask a question in a big audience like this, you want to, DJ and I to get on the phone with you and discuss your particular environment, we're happy to do so. Just reach out to the information that's in the chat, or info@restnsx.com, and we'll get you scheduled.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We'll stick around for a few more minutes if there's any additional questions, but please reach out, as Paul said, and happy to do a private demo. And just to make your life a little easier, for those of you who are still there, scan the QR code to get to the demo request page off our website. Or you can also get there right off the website to schedule a demo. And there you can put in your particulars of what you're looking for, or problems you're trying to solve. And again, just like this, it's not a sales marketing demo that we'll do for you. We'll take your feedback and cater your demo exactly what you're looking for. All right, we'll give it 3 more minutes, and thank you again.
Well, I do want to wish you all a good evening over there in Europe, and bonsoir or buenas noches, or good evening or good night, whatever time zone you're in. But we do appreciate it. We look forward to being able to serve you later in the future as your NSX needs become more and more prevalent in your environment.